to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to call Trustee Dodge. So George is going to call Trustee Dodge right now. Day.
I do minutes while you're waiting, or?
Sure. I'll entertain a motion to move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of June 15th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Any changes? Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Milani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. Motion carries. You got his number, George? You give or 708.
Just have it right down.
Very close to my number. Never realized that. He's not going to be able to see anyways. So why don't you go ahead and start, because he won't be able to see.
That's true.
This is just a demonstration. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do a short demonstration for the 311 system tonight. Just to do a quick introduction, the team that's been working on this is Dave, Heather, and Beth, and myself. The Tyler system is really a system that's generated from the early EAM system that Public Works did. It was a module that was previously bought with that system, and we have now. Oops.
Trustee Dodge, you with us?
I am here, thank you.
Okay, perfect. And we can hear you loud and clear. How about us?
I'm sorry, Keith, what was that?
Can you hear us loud and clear?
Yeah, that was good, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, the EAM system was rolled out in November of 2018, and this May, we actually got an upgrade of the 2002 version, and we've been beta testing that over the past month. And we identified a few glitches in the system that we are anticipating some fixes over the next couple weeks into September timeframe this fall. So with that, we're going to go ahead, and Beth is going to show you what the residents would see and how they would input a 311 work request into the system, which then comes to Public Works or another department here at the village. Thanks, Beth.
Hello, everyone. I'm Beth Formello with the IT department. I'm going to give a short example or short demo of the 311 system. This will appear eventually on our website, so when a citizen would like to put in a request, instead of calling us, they can now go to the portal. There's two main ways that they can put in a request: anonymously, which there are only a very select few categories, mostly for code enforcement, that they can put in without registering. All of the other categories that they might put a request in, they'd have to register. So to do that, they would come in. To register, they would click on the sign in button, and the instructions are there. They would have to register. They would put in their first name, their last name, their email address, and they would pick a password. Once they click the register button, it will send them an email, so they have to confirm their email address. So for right now, I'm not going to finish going through that. I'll log in as myself. So they would just put in their email address that they registered with, put in their password, and then sign in. And then once they get here, They can see all their past requests and see their statuses. They can see the main topics. Again, these are the ones that they could request anonymously if need be. They would have a map that they would show all of their previous, if they had put a request in with an address, they would see the pinpoints of the addresses that they put previous tickets in. And then to make a request, for one of the other topics that aren't up there, they can click on the make a request button over here. I know it's hard to see. Once they do that, they can pick all the different topics. So we have many different topics depending on the department. They would put in the address, and for this example, I'm using City Hall or the Village Hall, and a basic example of a pothole. So there is a pothole in the park or the parking lot. Depending on the topic, they would pick pothole. I forgot to, yeah, go ahead. So if they could also upload pictures, if they had a picture, and since they logged in, they would see their first name, their last name, and their email address. Then they would click submit. They would get a request number, and if they did supply their email address, they would also get an email saying, thank you for submitting your request, somebody will get back to you. And if they click OK, it'll go back to their main screen. So again, we could see that there's the new ticket that they put in. So right now, what this also happens is the department that the request comes into will also get an email. Whoever it's assigned to will get an email saying that the ticket is assigned to them. And then it will move over to the EAM system as a work order. Once it gets approved, it'll turn into a request, and then it'll get assigned to somebody in the field, and they can use their mobile app to update it and close it. Once they close it, the EAM will talk back to 311, and 311 will then send them, the citizen, an email saying, your request has been closed and has been completed. Again, this is just a very simple demonstration that they could put it in and get requests back and forth. Any questions?
Beth, there's there's going to be a mobile app for residents as well, right?
Correct. They are working on a new mobile app that is the reason why we went to this version of 311, and it won't be out until the fall. But we are now that we are on this version, we are prepared to go to the new mobile app once it's released.
And will the mobile app be with our Orland app button?
With any smartphone, anybody will be able to download the Orland Park 311 app, and they'd be able to make their requests and do a lot of other things through their app. And like Beth said, this is going to occur in the fall. They're still working out a number of bugs, and they're releasing patches here every 2 weeks. So when we are ready to go live, we want to make sure our product is 100%. But they're doing a lot of legwork in the background to get this to work.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Fenton?
You said some of the complaints or whatever are only going to be anonymous. Why aren't all of them?
We had talked to the different departments, and the consensus was they didn't want it. They wanted to know who was putting these requests in.
It follows existing policy, so the ones that are anonymous are going to be anonymous through this 311 is existing policy at the village right now. So the three categories that are anonymous are code issues, right?
Yep, code enforcement, yep.
Right. But, and that's what we do now in the village. So if anybody calls, they can do an anonymous code enforcement. The other ones are going to require
We said there were three. What are the other two?
oh,
There are three types of code enforcement. So it's restaurant and food sanitation, property maintenance and rentals requests, and then building permits and concerns.
What about police? Like if you were happened to be calling on your neighbor, but it was a police matter?
so we're not doing police through this right now. We can. I mean, if it's a police matter, obviously they should be going through 911.
Well, if they felt it wasn't a 911, but I was just thinking of
Yeah, they should be going to our normal police line, not through everything else.
No matter if, even if it's not a 911, they should still go through the police?
Yeah, because they have their protocols already set up for that.
Okay,
This is for, this will be non-police.
okay.
Yeah.
Mayor Peacock.
Trustee Dodge.
So glad to see we're making progress on this one. We've been on a long march. George, one of the things when we started on this journey was to make sure that our internal processes got back to our customers, right? So if they find a swing that needs maintenance in a park, or they find the pothole, or, for example, maybe they want to go anonymous that their neighbor has got, 10-inch weeds, et cetera. I just want to make sure that you are getting the data you anticipate from the system so that you can manage the department to say, why does it take you more than 24 hours to get back to our customer with an acknowledgement? That's in place, correct? I just want to make sure that put that out there.
Yep, and that's the important part of this CRM system, is that we don't want things to fall through the cracks.
And
So
Joel's giving us a head nod over there that is happening, so.
And that's, I was going to jump up.
Good. So George, you're cracking the whip. Is that what I'm hearing? You're the throat to choke, so to speak, as you say in IT?
we don't necessarily have to crack the whip as long as we have the infrastructure in place. Everybody will have their tasks assigned to them directly. The supervisors will have the ability to management. I know prior to right now every department has their own protocol for how they manage this stuff. Some are spreadsheets, some are just pieces of paper. We're going to have a uniform system for that. And again, it's just to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
Yeah, good to hear that, because I think, broadly, it's just too easy if you've got disparate processes, disparate ways of collecting data, reporting data, and using data in departments. Things do fall through the cracks. I mean, everybody on this board probably has friends or neighbors who've said, I called about this 6 months ago and I never heard back. Well, those days are gone, or will be gone soon. Correct, George?
That's exactly, nobody likes to hear that. And sometimes, when it might not be true, or whether it's true or not, we're going to have data now for that. And even if somebody calls us and wants to put in their request, our staff over the phone is going to take this information and they're going to enter it into the CRM. They're not going to still follow their own protocol. So all of our service requests are going to be going through this route.
Well, great to hear. Mayor Pico, one other maybe question for us is, George, I could see over time we'll have different use cases. Someone will say, my street is cracked, and the response is, thank you, we acknowledge it, but you're going to be slated for repair next year. We'll have to figure that out as we go. Would you agree?
That's exactly it. So they're going to get a response, and if the response is not always going to be the response that they're going to want to hear, they're going to get a response that's going to say, if you're slated, if your road is going to be resurfaced in 3 years, they'll know that. But everybody will be responded to.
Great.
And Trustee Fenton was mentioning why did some have to log in and other people be anonymous? Well, the whole point of creating an account is so we can follow up. And so that the resident will improve two-way communication. So when that ticket gets worked upon and acted upon in the field, whether do it on their mobile phone or on their tablet or what have you, when that ticket is closed, that resident will receive feedback that that ticket was closed. If everybody went in anonymously, there would be no way to provide that type of feedback.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Healy.
I have, as a member of the elder community, I have some very good friends who aren't very good with computers. There's two, because you said if they call on the phone, it'll be entered in that way. But if they wanted to talk to a live person, is there a telephone contact that'll go through on this too?
Well, they'll call, like if they call my office or they call George's office or if they call Public Works, whoever's handling it on the phone will address the issue and they'll enter it in there so that we still have a record of it.
I mean, if let's say Ed Lilo or someone like that is taking care of this problem, can they call him directly?
Exactly.
So they,
Yeah.
He doesn't answer.
What's that number?
So nothing's necessarily going to change from the resident. If a resident is used to calling and, and interacting that way, that's not going to change.
Okay.
So if they call Ed, if they call me, the only thing that's going to change then from the phone side is we're going to take that information and instead of putting it on a piece of paper, we're entering it directly into 311 so that that resident may not even have an email address, but from our standpoint, from staff's standpoint, we have a way to track this and to manage this. And to...
So then you would get back to the resident because you would be the person entering the information.
Yep. Or whoever is assigned,
Right, somebody.
whoever the ticket is assigned to. And so that's something else that happens in the background is not everybody's going to know what they're going to, they'll put down the wrong category and that'll happen. We'll have that audit trail. So when it comes through, and it's really a pothole issue, but they put down who knows what, it will get assigned to the right person. The resident the only way they're going to see that is if they log in, they'll see how it moves along in the process, but we're going to make sure it gets to the right person right away.
And from my office's perspective, there's two things here. One is obviously making sure that we get it in the system and we can track it. We can make sure it gets done. It obviously saves multiple phone calls from our office to make sure that something got taken care of. On the flip side, it keep things from falling through the cracks, which does unfortunately happen from time to time, where we get calls and somebody didn't respond to a complaint, which we've all dealt with. On the flip side, we also have people who will call all 6 of us, and they will have already talked to 3 people at staff, and it has been addressed. They just didn't like the answer they received. And we will also be able to see and hear that this person was talked to, here was the solution, or here's what the person was told, so that, we're not dealing with 7 calls. I would imagine that when the second person gets called and says, hey, we see in your system that you were called, this is what you were told, this is the situation, that we probably won't get 5 more calls.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Malani?
Watching the demo, I'm happy to see this because this is something that I've been looking forward to for over a year now, being able to implement some kind of efficiencies in our processes. But there were a lot of touch points that were brought up. Is this an automated workflow? Like if I submit a work order, is there going to be a set of order queues, basically, they're going to be funneled to the right department automatically? Or is someone going to have to go in and decide that and then assign the work to people, or is it going to go to like the next person available?
So that's a lot of the work that's going on in the background right now, is making sure that when they select their correct category, that it's going to the right person. And maybe Beth and Heather can talk about the work that they've put into that.
Correct. Each request type, it has a person assigned to it and has a department assigned to it. So the department will get an email and the person it's assigned to will get an email. So it does.
So we want to avoid someone having to manually go in there and assign it to somebody.
Right.
So when if they select the right category, it'll go to that person. And even if they don't, the person that got it can see they're not the right person. They'll assign it to the right person.
So they have the ability to reassign. Because, yeah, that's what I'm looking for, is like that instant access to my work, right? If I have 3 things assigned to me, I want to be able to jump on it right away. I know what I need to do next and take care of it. And the fact that it's being taken care of immediately, that takes a lot of the time out that we're probably, wasting with voicemail messages and things like that. Right. So it's good to hear. Thanks.
Mayor Peacock?
Trustee Dodge?
Kind of building off of Trustee Malani's comments. George, have you set in place or will you soon set in place an ability to take a look at these types of issues? I mean, Trustee Malani brings up a good point where if 20 out of every 100 of our entries from residents are quote-unquote misclassified or misdirected, how do we capture that so we start to continuously improve our processes? Is that on your glide path for implementation here?
So this entering is just step 1 of the whole process. The remaining process is management of this. And so all of our department directors are going to have a very important role. They're going to monitor what's going on in their departments, again, because we don't want anything to fall through the cracks. In my experience is in these programs, we really learn a lot quickly. We'll see trends happening. And so if there is a problem area, we're going to be getting a lot of requests from that area. And then we'll be able to map those as well, because they're going to be submitted by address. So it's going to be incumbent upon management just to make sure that we're monitoring all that, to follow those trends, to make sure nothing's falling through the cracks, and to learn from those as well.
Right. Mr. Chairman, one more question.
Trustee Malani?
So kind of as part of this exercise, are we doing process mapping where we're sitting down and documenting our processes? Because that's, I think, one thing that Trustee Dodge has brought up in previous meetings, that, you know, some of our processes, we may not be 100% sure what they are. I think this gives us a good way to look at them and be able to say, okay, here's how we're doing it, but maybe we can tweak a little bit and make it even more efficient. So
Absolutely.
Are we doing that?
So the nice thing, the ERI caused a lot of challenges for us, right? But the good thing is, we're bringing in a lot of people with fresh set of eyes who, just because they're new to the process and because they don't have the necessary background on that, they're already doing those steps. I'm going to use myself as an example. We had a cell phone maintenance thing come through. It required my signature. And I know from my past life that I had a very specific process on that. So we're getting together this week to really hammer out that process. And what I've always found with these processes is the key is communication. How are we communicating when there's interdepartmental responsibilities? So it's a good exercise that we're all going through right now. We're asking a lot of questions just because we don't know. And naturally, we're doing those process steps.
Right. No, that's good. Yeah, I'm kind of seeing a lot of the same things. I mean, my focus area at work right now is business process automation, right? So it's like, I've talked to several customers, and what do they need to do? They need to figure out how to do more with less people. I mean, that's kind of like one of the biggest things that they're focusing on, and how do we make things faster for our customers, and how do we improve? So hearing things like this, and, you know, I think we're scratching the surface, and we're making huge steps compared to where we were. So it's, you know, there's a long road ahead of us to get to where we want to be, but I'm looking forward to it.
And this is also part of our overall lean process improvements. We've talked about this a little bit, but you mentioned it. Right now, if we have a step that required somebody to type an email, or if we had a step that we had to leave a voicemail for somebody, that's an extra step that we're eliminating. So we want to keep looking for those steps that we can eliminate so that we can actually focus on our priority missions.
Any other comments?
So you'll see this. We're going to go live anticipated in September.
We have a short video as well to show you from Tyler.
Okay.
And that's the last of the presentation.
Can you just cue up how did this video come up? Maybe Beth or Heather?
Yep. I'm sorry, George, what did you ask?
So how did we get on this video?
So Tyler put together this marketing tool, and they essentially highlighted Orland Park's EAM system that we implemented in November of 2018, and they included us as one of the, I think, 5 or 6 cities nationwide. So we will go ahead and show you this video.
World where all city, county.
Sorry.
At Tyler Technologies, we imagine a world where all city, county, and regional governments are connected through a healthy digital infrastructure. Connecting data, people, and processes makes communities safer, smarter, and more responsive to the needs of residents. We've seen our vision become reality, spurring innovation through our Esri-enabled solutions. For example, in New York, the Saratoga Springs School District uses the onboard Tyler Drive tablet with Esri mapping to guide drivers on new and changing routes for student meal delivery during COVID-19 school closures. In Oklahoma, the Edmond Police Department uses embedded Esri GIS capabilities in Tyler's New World CAD solution to provide geospatial intelligence, helping agencies respond better and faster to emergencies. Cities like Temecula, California have streamlined community development using Tyler's Esri-enabled EnerGov solution, reducing the average permitting process by 24 to 48 hours. And in Orland Park, Illinois, staff grew its actionable asset count from 15,000 to nearly 100,000 in 90 days after leveraging Tyler EAM with Esri mapping to geotag all assets from playground equipment to baseball fields. Finally, using Tyler's IAS World property data solution, built with a powerful Esri integration, the state of Tennessee illustrates how appraisal services can be streamlined by providing advanced technology for 3 state departments and 84 of its counties, ensuring fair and equitable taxation for all residents. Tyler Technologies and Esri are combining their technologies to improve performance, increase operational efficiencies, and strengthen community trust to help state and local governments drive connected, thriving communities.
That's all we have for the 311.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Updated social media policy?
I'll entertain a motion to move to recommend to the village board to adopt the revised and updated social media policy as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a presentation?
We have a presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mallory Maluzzi. I'm one of the attorneys at Kleinthorpe & Jenkins. I work with Dennis, and here to kind of go over some of the overview of the draft social media policy for your consideration. So the reason why we are adopting a social media policy is that social media pages are considered public forums in the law, meaning that they're subject to the First Amendment. Similar to this board meeting, this committee of the whole meeting, and your board meetings being limited public forums, open and subject to First Amendment, the social media pages are considered the same type of public discourse when a municipality or other government opens them up for communication between the government and the public. So that means that the village can't restrict speech just because it doesn't like the views or the message of the speaker. So what, as I was saying, what the proposed policy does is create and establish our social media platforms and accounts as a limited public forum, meaning that we can reserve it for and limit it for topics, specific topics, and the topics that the policy lays out is issues related to village events, programs, projects, activities, and other village-related business. So the purpose of that policy is to inform and communicate with citizens, mainly residents, about things happening in Orland Park. And that's the purpose of it. And with this policy, you're able to then restrict speech within those limitations of the forum. A good example is, again, a village board meeting is a limited public forum where people who come to speak have, you've established rules on public comment about what the topics are that people can speak on. And it's different than, for example, your traditional public forums of standing on a sidewalk or in a park being able to talk about whatever you want, whatever an individual wants. So it's within those confines. And this policy gives us that structure and framework to clearly identify for the village and for participants what the rules are and what is and is not appropriate. This policy is, there's 2 policies for consideration. One is for use by the public, and then one is for the village's use of its accounts. This is separate and apart from employees' private use of their own social media. That is handled within the employee handbook. So that's a different issue, and this would just be letting the public know what's appropriate in the limited forum, and then setting up their own village procedures for how it will be posting information on the accounts. So there are 10 restrictions of content in the policy of what would not be allowed. These are ones that have been tested throughout the courts across the country. They're common ones that you've seen in other places. Cannot be discriminatory, can't be political campaigning, can't be encouraging illegal activity, defamatory. One that is common is the comments need to be related to whatever the particular post is. So again, similar to if you allowed, or a municipality allowed comments on agenda items by the public, someone couldn't stand up and start talking about something completely unrelated to that agenda item. So it would be similar to that. So these are kind of what governs the conduct and what can and cannot be restricted by staff who are monitoring and maintaining the social media policy. This notice, including these, would be posted on the social media accounts in a prominent, consistent place so that everyone in the public is aware of what is and is not allowed. So we would work on, if this is approved, it would be work on updating those social media accounts so that would be available. Depending on the platform, this could actually be posted, or a direct link to the policy would be provided. Whatever one is more applicable for that platform, given some space concerns. So this would allow, again, the village to remove our high comments that violate the content parameters. Again, unfortunately, the First Amendment allows for a lot of unpleasant speech, and we can't just restrict speech because it's not nice or impolite. A lot of speech has to be let through under the First Amendment. And so that's just a reminder. I do have some examples of some other, this is the village's Instagram account from several years ago. You can see here that there was a negative comment about a new parking structure. One was positive and one was somewhat negative, and both remained as would be appropriate. I also included an example from Orland Aurora Police Department. This was a post, and they pretty much keep everything. So I wanted to kind of go through some of these examples of what maybe we could allow and what could be removed under the proposed policy, because they leave everything up. So it would be some good comparisons. And I would advise and state that if it's in the gray area, it's always better to leave it up, because even if it's somewhat unpleasant or somewhat offensive, if it's right on that gray line, you want to err more on the side of First Amendment than restricting the speech, just to be safer. So on this one, this was a post originally about food pantry availability hours, and updated to state that it reached capacity. And as you can see, one of the comments there talked about people complaining about the food pantry being a burden. It does have an acronym for some vulgar language, but doesn't spell it out. And then the comments following that are similar in and about it, either commenting on people going to food pantries, and their views on government and people who maybe use government services. These are all related to the post, as in the food pantry and the discussion on it. None of it really gets into discriminatory content. It's a lot of opinion back and forth on different people. So this would likely remain on the page as it did here. There's nothing that really violates the policy, even though it might not be everyone's opinion, and it might, offend some people as well. You start getting into more here, and you can see that people start making, this was posted, a couple weeks ago, so it was during the time of a lot of the protests. And you can start getting here, someone posted a comment about a protest for Elijah Mclean. This would be unrelated to the post about the food pantry. This is where while that post in and of itself, asking to explain the following and posting a news article, is nothing in itself is offensive or anything inappropriate, it is not in the correct place because it's not related to the post itself. So that could be removed under the policy for that reason. And we would explain to the commenter that is why it was removed based on that policy. Again, at the bottom here is this Donna Ann person who is making a comment and questioning about complaint reports. Again, not related to the post. In fact, this person copy and pasted this on every single post, recent post by the police department. Again, trying to communicate and get the message across. In the policy, it does lay out the different procedures and ways and limited ways for staff to respond to comments. And we tried to emphasize that easy factual responses, directing them to the correct department. If it's an easy question like what time are classes or is there still space available, answering those questions are appropriate, but mainly just addressing it to the right person. That can be offline and not engaging in back and forth on social media with residents that could turn into something more combative. So in this case, if this post was hidden, that person could be messaged with the appropriate contact person for their inquiry and letting them know that it necessarily wouldn't be appropriate for this post because it wasn't related to the content of the post. So those are some examples here, because pretty much everything on this part starts getting unrelated to the food pantry itself. And so that's where a little more of the discretion is, because it's, again, limited to the topic. Again, in theory, though, obviously they have a policy that is a little broader, somewhat similar, but they've decided to just kind of leave everything more out there and let the open discourse. So the policy is there if you choose to exercise it, but you could also leave things up. It is discretionary at that point, but you need to be consistent with not just removing anything that's negative and leaving things that are positive but unrelated. So consistency is key. So that's the main thing. Again, the other portions of the policy are the back end procedural for staff about the posts themselves that the information staff would be putting out, that it goes through the public information office and specific designees who are trained, that they need to be posts about business purposes only. And again, as I said, the standards for interacting with the public. We also have in there the procedures that need to be followed in the event posts are taken down or hidden with notation, so we have a record of why it was and how it met the policy that we have. So with that, I can answer any questions that you guys might have.
I have a question.
Trustee Fenton.
If you go to the first part, that number 1, under, oops, hold on one
The
second.
content restrictions one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so where it says slanderous, libel, defamation of language, defamatory language, blah, 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 reference. So that means anyone who is either an employee or an elected official, if they were to say something in that regards about another individual, be it, a staff member, a village member of the board, would that also be taken down?
It would depend on what it is. So staff members and elected officials have a higher standard of defamation. So that is very, we would have to make sure it met that clearer, higher standard. It usually is aimed at like responding to a comment by someone and attacking that character. But if it was a clear defamatory one, again, if it's in the gray area, the error is always on the side of not restricting speech, but if it meets that, it can meet it for staff and elected officials, but they are held to a higher standard of defamation. It has to be defamation per se.
So they really shouldn't be doing it?
Restricting speech against staff and elected officials, that was the question? They shouldn't be doing it?
Well, in other words, if someone were to say something negative about somebody else and they were using the social media, the Village of Orland Park social media, I don't think that would be appropriate. if we have all these rules about what residents can say and can't say, wouldn't, as you just said, we would be held to a higher standard?
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Okay.
This is for what the village can restrict of comments on its own page. This doesn't govern what elected officials do on social media themselves as individuals. Or
No, I'm not talking about their own social media. I'm talking about the use of village social media.
Okay, so so the village should only be posting for the accounts, this policy states that the village produces the post of whatever information, and any responses on behalf of the village are under those directives I said about providing factual information or pointing them to the correct person. If a resident or a citizen or a poster is making negative statements about staff or an elected official as a comment on that post?
No, I'm talking about if an elected official or a staff member post something negative about a staff member or an elected official on the village's website or uses it on YouTube or Facebook or any of that stuff. Wouldn't that be in violation?
Well, if they're doing it and they're not logged in as the Village of Orland Park, that's governed by the employee handbook policy, not this policy. And elected officials signed in under their accounts, are governed by, they're just using as a private citizen. If anyone's logged in as the Village of Orland Park's account and making posts, commenting, that's governed by this policy as I stated. And responding, they can't. So the Village of Orland Park has a page, and it can make posts and respond to comments. And that's that's what this policy governs, is what staff does under logged in as the Village of Orland Park. If a staff member goes home and logs in on their personal one and responds to a comment on the Village of Orland Park, but logged in as
That's their personal stuff. I'm not worried about anybody's personal stuff.
Okay, so staff can only post on behalf of the village pursuant to this policy. So there should not be any negative comments posted by a staff member logged in as the Village of Orland Park, because this policy states they're only answering questions and directing people to the correct staff or making the original post. That's what the policy has, if they're logged in as the village.
Trustee Cotton, I think what you're asking is if an elected official logs in as themselves to the village's Facebook page and makes a comment that's slanderous, it would be treated the exact same way that it's held to the same standard.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because they're not logged in under the village account, they're logged in under their personal account or their trustee account, but they're not under this policy.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Healy?
If a post, it says here that a post is deemed in violation of the policy, who's doing the deeming?
The Public Information Office.
And if someone wanted to appeal that, your decision, is there a process for that, or they're just...
So there's not a written appeal process, but they would be notified of it and the reasons why, and they could always respond, explain, and if, so for example, if there's something in the post that violates it, and it could be reworded in a different way to not violate it, they could explain that, and they would be able to post it so that it doesn't violate the same information without maybe taking out a swear word or something like that. So there's definitely ways to either repost it once you know what to remove whatever violated the content, or to challenge it and discuss it with the Public Information Officer, but there's no set appeal process in it right now.
There's a messaging system set up on all our social media pages where it says contact us or send us an email so they can reach out to us. But there's also a situation where we wouldn't reach out to them, and that's on some of our social media. We have words that are automatically blocked. So, foul language, that's automatically blocked by the server itself. You just set it like that, so they wouldn't get contacted.
Okay.
But should they contact us, we will explain exactly why. And we keep a record of everything that we removed and a note as to why we removed it.
Well, if there's a habitual person who keeps getting knocked off for one comment after another, it's just it's hard to judge. I just hope you're not there out on alone. You'll have the support of management over you for your decision making. So.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't violate anything in the
Thank you.
Mayor Peacock?
Trustee Dodge.
A question for the attorney. So you mentioned that the courts have upheld that this is a public forum, and so this policy then would create this as a limited public forum in order to govern according to some of the court-tested rules. That's essentially the gist of this, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Has this idea of us as a governmental agency been upheld in court in terms of a limited public forum?
As in the village being a government agency?
Yeah, well, we are a government agency
Yes.
for sure, but the idea of a limited public forum, other governmental entities have done this, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, most of the cases tend to be, it's definitely been within units of government, but it's also been held for individual elected officials, like official pages. The most recent public one being President Trump and his blocking of users on Twitter. And that was one that, again, established that it was a limited public forum, even for an elected official. And so it definitely extends to a government agency or a body of government itself.
All right, thank you. And then I think, pivoting off of Kathy's questions, if someone goes on to these sites and they disagree with the decision we've made, that certainly, hallelujah to democracy, First Amendment, and all that. If it starts to become a bit more, I don't know, assertive, aggressive, slanderous, libelous, damaging, etc., that's then when we can start to react? Do I understand this correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what you've also seen is that in other places, they simply just let it flow because, there's more than a few quotes on the First Amendment. If someone is really vile or low, nasty, or perhaps stupid, then the best thing to let them do is keep opening their mouth. And so this is simply a way to try and regulate that on a public forum, right? So, we could go either way on this one. You let them flap their jaws and prove themselves to be a difficult person, or we limit it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. Motion carries. Any citizen visitors speak at the committee of the whole? Nothing? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. We'll reconvene the board meeting in about 11 or 12 minutes.